Different people, including, unfortunately, our close ones, can break into or hack computers on the internet or simply computers and other computing devices, such as smartphones and tablets. Therefore, today, it is impossible to be protected from anyone on the internet. And feeling your protection only because supposedly no one is interested in you and supposedly no one knows about you is equally impossible. And if we look and delve a little into what is happening on the other side of the barricades, we will understand that this is indeed a very serious market. It copies all the best that is happening in the legal world. This includes technical support, its own call centers, its own recruitment services, its own security, and of course, programmers, treasurers, financiers, accountants, and its own arbitration, and various economic zones, and so on, and so forth. Indeed, in terms of turnover, this market has already advanced very far, and the turnover on the other side of the shore is, one could say, comparable to what is happening in the market for alcohol or the trade in weapons. It is indeed trillions of dollars, and if we shift from the overall picture of the market to the earnings of individual hackers, we will see that these are truly very large amounts. That is why a considerable number of young people are undoubtedly trying to turn to the dark side, attempting to earn money in this way. Considering the often inadequate legislation and the sometimes low qualifications of investigators and law enforcement personnel, these hackers frequently remain uncaught. Especially if they operate in neighboring jurisdictions, in countries where Russia has geopolitical conflicts, there is no extradition of criminals between these countries, and consequently, hackers feel quite unpunished, such as in these regions. And that is why the cybercrime market will not collapse on its own. What unites all these bad guys who act against us from completely different parts of the world? Attacks usually occur according to the same scenario, on a large scale. It is always not a one-off action. It is always a multi-step process. That is, initially, the perpetrator must gather some information about us in order for their attack to be more effective. Who are we? What are we interested in? What kind of computer do we have? What operating system is it running? What applications are installed on it? What are the weak points of our computer? And so on, and so forth. Perhaps, who are our friends or relatives? Or what is our circle of communication like? Then, the actual attack is carried out, which also consists of many steps. In general, specialists divide the number of steps in attacks against us into between 7 and over 20, but the essence is not in the quantity, but in the fact that it is always a certain sequence. Having learned all our vulnerabilities, understanding how we can be lured and caught in their net, the wrongdoers are preparing some kind of platform. They create some phishing websites, and they write some phishing messages. Then, they actually carry this out. For example, they send phishing messages or try to call us pretending to be from the security service of Sberbank or some other credit organization, or on behalf of certain special services, law enforcement agencies, and so on. Their task is to establish themselves on our computers by exploiting various vulnerabilities, that is, weak points in the settings, configurations, and software that we use on our smartphones, tablets, and computers. Then, they actually expand their powers on the computer. In corporate or departmental networks, they attempt to increase the number of compromised nodes. That is, they thereby expand their habitat within the internet. For us, as ordinary citizens, they simply embed themselves on our computer, smartphone, or tablet, and then search for what they came for. If their interest is documents, they try to sift through the folder with photographs, the documents folder. Corresponding folders saved in messengers, photographs on smartphones, and so on. If their task is to steal money, they look for logins and passwords, including those saved in browsers. If their task is to blackmail us, they steal certain information. If their task is to demand a ransom from us, they encrypt data on our computer, our music collection, the collection of all the photos or videos that we downloaded at some point, which are valuable to us, and so on. That is, note that any attack has no exceptions. It always consists of many steps. This makes life easier for cybersecurity specialists because it is often impossible to block an attack. At the very first step, we only learn that we are of interest to hackers after some time. But we can indeed try to detect and block the attack in its final stages, when the attacker is already attempting to achieve some goal or task. And this happens regardless of whether the attacker is an individual or a group of hackers targeting a specific person, a whole company, or an entire state. And if we look at the statistics that were collected over the course of a year, the second half of 2022 and the first half of 2023, according to Positive Technologies, note that the vectors of attacks. The methods of implementing attacks on organizations and individuals do not differ significantly from each other, but overall, the methods of attack are very similar. Phishing is equally carried out against private individuals, that is, against you, and against the companies you work for or the institutions you study at. The same vulnerabilities are sought on the websites of large companies as well as on your own computers, in your browsers, etc. This means that the methods of the vector are similar. Does this mean that the methods of protection will be the same? Unfortunately, I have to say that they are not. The methods of protection will not be the same, precisely because companies can spend a considerable amount of money, personnel, and time on their security. For you, it must be honestly acknowledged, this is not your main activity, not your primary function. The methods of attacks are the same, but the methods of protection will vary. However, it is very important to note that in the case of both corporate attacks and attacks on private individuals, there are rules of basic digital hygiene that we will discuss. Throughout this short course, we will examine different elements that require protection, which we use in our lives, including onboard computers in cars, refrigerators, social networks, messengers, email, and accounts on the government services portal, and so on. But for all these elements or objects of protection, the main protective measures remain unchanged. And if you remember these 5 important key steps or protective measures by the end of this course, we will consider our task accomplished. So what are the important steps we will discuss next? Firstly, it is the regular updating of software. If you enable automatic updates for your operating system, including mobile, your software, as well as extensions or plugins for it, this means that attackers have significantly reduced opportunities to exploit vulnerabilities in the software. Probably 99% of all attacks are carried out through known vulnerabilities, which someone forgot to patch, someone forgot to close, but the attackers did not forget. They found them, they exploited them, and they took control of your computer, your data, your accounts on the internet. Therefore, if you can promptly patch and update your software, and today, almost any software can be configured for automatic updates, you will significantly enhance your security. The second recommendation is to implement multi-factor authentication. And immediately the third, the use of reliable passwords. We will also discuss them in more detail. Just remember that having a strong password does not mean you are protected, because it can be observed, intercepted, guessed, and it may even appear in some leaks that emerge on the internet, and you cannot influence the occurrence of these leaks, for example, if it is a leak from a service that you use or have used. In this case, your password will become public knowledge, or at the very least, the property of hackers. Therefore, a strong password does not protect you from the fact that attackers may find out about it. Multi-factor authentication provides protection because even if a hacker knows your password, with multi-factor authentication enabled, they will not be able to access your email, your social network, hijack your account on Telegram or any other messenger, access government services, or even log into internet banking and any other internet services you use. He will not discover your secrets. He will not be able to hijack your account and demand money for its return. He will not be able to find out who you are messaging, what your circle of friends is like, and so on. Therefore, a strong password and multi-factor authentication are the second and third recommendations that will significantly enhance your security in this turbulent world of virtual threats. Changing the default settings is also a very simple recommendation. If you have bought yourself a video camera for monitoring your home, your summer house, and so on, if you have bought yourself a fitness tracker, if you have bought yourself a refrigerator with internet connectivity or a vacuum cleaner, typically, all these devices connected to the internet have some basic protection mechanism, and they are generally, again, based on password protection. And the password is usually set to default. It could be something like 4 ones or 4 zeros or something similar, or even the word password in Russian. It is not so important what the default password is. It is known to everyone because the documentation for this kind of solution is posted on the internet. So, don't be lazy and change the default. Passwords, at the very least the passwords, when purchasing any gadget, device, or software that you use. Ideally, of course, it is worth changing various other settings, such as ports for management systems, video surveillance systems, and so on, but that is already advanced. At the very least, change the passwords. And finally, the fifth recommendation cannot be formulated very precisely, in detail, or specifically. It is still expressed more generally and critically. Think, because the weakest link in security is the human being. And the criminals know this very well. They catch us with various fraudulent bait that we very easily fall for, indeed, precisely because they know which pain points to press. Therefore, we will also talk about what these pain points are, and you will further understand what I mean by the concept of critical thinking.